Friday here in Tzfat, especially a good Erev Shabbos, right? And that's because Fridays have not just the extra hectic preparation to get ready for Shabbos, but already, especially from noon, or according to the Ari, already from an hour before noon, the 5th hour into the 6th hour, Yom HaShishi, there's already mystically an emanation of the Neshama Yisera, of the extra soul, which of course is in full capacity on Shabbos, but it already starts on Erev Shabbos. And today we're going to explore is the question, when does Shmita actually begin? Now, it's obvious, and it's an explicit Mishnah, the first Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't say so much so in the Torah when Shmita begins, but Aleph Tishrei, what we call Rosh Hashanah, that is the transformation, the transition from one year to the next in our calendar, which goes by creation. If the world was created on Rosh Hashanah, then every Rosh Hashanah marks another year from 5781 to 5782, right? So too, that is the shift for Shmita and Yovel. That's how we count it. That's the demarcation line. And that's not obvious, by the way. We have other, just like in the secular world, we have the school year is September 1st, the calendrical year is January 1st, the tax year is April 15th. Sorry to remind anyone. There's different cutoff dates, there's different beginnings, different cycles. So the cutoff date, the beginning of Shmita is officially Rosh Hashanah. I even saw beautifully that come this Rosh Hashanah, when you say Shechiyanu, when you light the candles, or when you make Kiddush, Shechiyanu v'kimanu v'ganu l'zman hazeh, you're not just saying that on Rosh Hashanah, on the shofar, you're saying it on the whole year. Baruch Hashem, you made it to another 7 years since the last time. And as we say, just like we made it to this time, like we say the Shana Abba Yerushalayim, we put up the Seder, the Pesach dishes back into the boydom. We say a prayer that we should be zocher if we take them down again next year. So we should be zocher. It's not taken for granted that we made it 7 years, and we'll make it to another Shmita. This time a full-fledged Shmita with the Beis HaMikdash and all the trimmings. But that's the official start of Shmita. Nothing I say in this class should take away from that. The official Doraita Torah calendrical Shmita is Rosh Hashanah. However, just like Shabbos starts at sundown, but we know, and we've learned several times, that to continue this parallel between Shmita and Shabbos, there's a mitzvah called Tosefet Shabbos, that we accept Shabbos before Shabbos accepts us, right? Shabbos happens whether you're ready or not at sunset. We always have a mitzvah d'oraita to accept upon ourselves the holiness and the mitzvahs and the averis, if you will, of Shabbos in advance, whether it be through candle lighting half an hour before each place according to its custom, but at least a couple of minutes to be able to say Hareini Macabbi Shabbos, and you go to the Shabbos so the Shabbos doesn't come unto you. That's a mitzvah. What about Shmita? You probably won't be surprised to find out that the Gemara is replete with a discussion in several places in the Mishnah and the Gemara, that's something called Tosefet Shvi'it, Tosefet Shmita, that the halachot and the mitzvot of Shmita already happened before. Now, the outline of this year is going to be kind of a, I don't know what exactly it's called, maybe like a teaser. I'm going to show you a Mishnah and pass out these source sheets, which seems to imply that after Shavuos, we're already deep into halachot of Shmita, and you're going to say, oh my gosh, I didn't know, no one told me. It says in the Mishnah, even from Pesach, I didn't realize that. I tell you in advance, we're then going to discover that does not apply nowadays without a Beit HaMikdash. And then with the second half of this year, we're going to discover one halacha which does apply nowadays. And this is going to be halacha l'maisa in our own gardens and backyards, or mirpesets, whatever the case may be, where we have to know Shmita before Shmita. And that's, I guess, what part of the justification for learning it in the summer and not waiting. It's like you don't learn Hilchos Shabbos on Shabbos, you learn Hilchos Shabbos during the week. Okay. Okay, great. Let's just review. I'm not a farmer. I am a once in future rabbi of a agricultural moshav. future, because that's what it seems the future holds for me this upcoming Shmita year. So the way it works in a classic wheat field in Eretz Yisrael, and I think in America may be different, is you plant the wheat in the beginning of what we call in Israel the winter. We call it in America the fall. Israel doesn't really have that same kind of four seasons so clearly. After the first rain, okay, it began to rain, the soil is moist. We don't irrigate wheat in Israel. It doesn't pay. And so it's called in Hebrew, in the lashon of the Mishnah, a stebal. It totally relies on the irrigation from heaven. The wheat. By the way, most wheat, to the best of my knowledge, in Israel is used for animal feed. It's not used for flour. Most of the flour that we consume, bread or cookies or whatever it is, comes from wheat grown in Chutz La'aretz. It's imported wheat, and that is why we say on wine, just parenthetically, small halacha, when we say ala michya or ala gefen, we say ba'al pri gafna, using the possessive it's ala aretz, meaning Eretz Yisrael, ve'al gafna, it's vine, because most wine and grape juice, you have to check with grape juice these days. They're doing some funny things. If you see the grape juice really cheap with extra sugar, it's probably made in Spain or something like that. But check. But generally, grape juice and wine is grown here, so it's gafna. Where we don't. But if it is foreign wine or grape juice, you say al aretz, on the land of Israel, and al gefen, on the vine, not its vine. And this, regarding wheat, we don't say al aretz al michyata, right, on its sustenance, because most wheat does not come from Eretz Yisrael. If you're like, so you're saying you never even heard of al michyata. You're wondering, how did that happen? That's an excellent question. I'm not sure. It's a good question. I think I could be wrong. I learned this not long ago, but it's not. My memory's not serving me. That the final formulation took some time. It could be even there were a lot of times in davening, and you see sometimes. This is a general note. I'm definitely not an expert in the nusach of tefillah, but a lot of times you see different nuances and variations in different sidurim, not just between Ashkenaz and Sfard, even within Ashkenaz, within Sfard. It's not like someone all of a sudden made it up. They're very, very ancient nuschaot, versions of the siddur, texts of the siddur, where you can see a change nowadays, but it really reflects. It's not someone that didn't just say, oh, let's do it this way. It's based on just a different tradition which existed. So these different nuschot may have been quote unquote floating up there, and they became formulated much later, when it became canonized. Don't forget that the siddur wasn't printed. So a lot of time you have a lot more different communities, different manuscripts, different traditions. So it's a lot more fluid than we may imagine, the siddur. And what we think is like the siddur, the benching, only became much more concretized much later than we would imagine. Anyway, that's kind of off the track. Let's go back to Shmita and how the agricultural year works in a classic Israeli modern field. Planting is in the fall, after the first rain. And then the farmer, as we know, is a trait of emunah. And pretty much after that, he lifts his eyes to heaven, even nowadays, because it doesn't pay to start irrigating great tracts of land, and the profit to expense ratio wouldn't allow him to invest so much in the field. And then, especially if it's being harvested for animals, you don't wait till it gets like that, Nebraska grain, golden. It's actually cut around Pesach, between Pesach, depends on when Pesach is, in the early spring, when it's green, still it's tall and green. I think, I'm not such an expert in this, but sometimes they do leave it to be straw, like the golden color, but then they put it into the bales and so forth, and that feeds the animals in the mostly in the dairy farms. It's really part of the milk. It's really used in many farms. The fields are really part of an extension of the dairy farming. That's interesting to note. Now, what does this have to do with Shmita? So when do you plow? Plowing is preparation for planting. So plowing is done. It could be done really anytime. I'm not such an expert, but what I've just seen in the territory, in the field, is that they plow even in the summer. They plow in the summer, which means before Rosh Hashanah, for the planting, which in a regular year will take place after Rosh Hashanah. Because again, Rosh Hashanah, of course, kind of shifts between this year, early September to early October. But generally, they're not going to plant till mid to October, November, as the rain happens. Now, so let's pass out the sheet and talk about Tosefet Shvi'it. To make sure that we get to the halacha l'maisa, the bottom line practical halacha, I actually wrote down 4 or 5 points here that I want to make sure I cover. What's the deal? When can I plant my flowers? When can I plant my rose bush? When can I plant my cherry tree this year? So I'll make sure that we kind of lock ourselves in, because we're going to look at some very primary sources. Here we go. There's 2 pages. This is something not right here. Hold on. This is the first one. Thank you. I think there should be enough. And again, for those of you who are new to the class, what we kind of pride ourselves on, or with the unique point of the class, is it's not a halacha class where it's checkpoint, 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 do this, do this, do this, don't do that, don't do that. We're going back to look at the halacha from the source to understand how the halacha that we do today came to be, and understand the reasoning and the processes behind it, and help us remember and identify. Does everyone have 2 sheets here? There's more sheets. What? Here. There's 2 pages. One says on top Shmita, and the other one is just the starts. Okay. For those of you, I'm wondering if are you all at home? Does someone want to take again a picture? Should I do it? I don't know how to do it either. And send to Judy to put on the WhatsApp for the people who are Oh, that's a good idea. Hold on one second. We have a number of people here. Do you have Rachel / Bobby? Yeah, I think that's who it is. Okay, so maybe you take a picture and send it to her, and she can. There's other people here also. I'm not sure how it will get to everyone, but those of you following, even if you don't have the sheet. Okay. No problem. And again, those of you participating via Zoom, if you have any issues, both video, audio, or something's not right, don't hesitate to speak up. You can even ask a question. I think it'll work. And by the way, my battery on my tablet, we didn't find an extension cord, is relatively low. So if you get cut off, I really, really apologize. Okay, remember I said surprise, right? You're going to start reading the Mishnah, which is our earliest primary source, I guess, besides for the Torah, in Torah Sheba'al Peh about Shmita. You open up the Mishnah, and what does the Mishnah say? Look at the first Mishnah. It's Mishnah in Shvi'it 1:1. Until when may they plow an orchard in the 6th year? And you're like, whoa, what do you mean the 6th year? I thought we were talking about the 7th year. So Beis Shammai says, as long as such work will benefit the fruit of the trees this year. And Beis Hillel says you can do it till Atzeret, till Shavuot. After Shavuot, no more plowing in your orchard. And the Mishnah notes, Krovim divrei elu liot ki divrei elu, the views of this school, of this Beis Medrash, of Hillel, are close to those of the other, of Shammai. There's not much different between these 2 points in time. The main point is that as long as the plowing is benefiting the fruit of the tree of the 6th year, you now have, what's on the tree now? Let's say, I don't know, grapes are on the tree. You have figs already? Pomegranates are a little late. You have pomegranates that are full already? Yeah? Dub Devan, hey, Dub Devan, right? So if the plowing now, by tilling that ground, somehow You'll be increasing the nutrition that the roots are going to be able to send up to the fruit. You'll be able to, if you're irrigating or if you're in a place where there's rain, I guess there's never really rain this season, but maybe somehow that the irrigation will allow any moisture that does gather to penetrate deeper and kind of make the fruits more robust. I don't really understand the agricultural processes here, but that's the rule of thumb. As long as it's benefiting the fruit of the 6th year, so that act is defined as a labor of the 6th year. But if you're already past Shavuot, in other words, the fruits are ready to be picked, it's not going to help. So why are you plowing? You're plowing really not for the fruits for now that you're about to pick this summer. You're already getting these trees ready for next year, for the Shvi'it, for the 7th year, Shmita. Once it's clear that there's no direct benefit for the 6th year, and the only reason you're plowing is for the 7th year, that's already part of Tosefet Shvi'it. That's already a no-no in the 6th year. I didn't quote this Mishnah here. It's even more stark in a field, in a grain field. In Hebrew, it's called the Steh HaLavan. By the way, the Moshav where I am, the once future rabbi, is actually called Steh Ilan. That's actually what what's the first word you're talking about, the Steh HaIlan. I don't know if that influenced the pioneers and why they called it that, but it's possible. Mm-hmm. So this would technically apply to pruning as well. But again, don't take what I'm telling you now to write down in pen for your practical to do or to do not list, because as I said, we're going to see this is not practical halach, right? I just want to show you the background. Then we're going to say this was in effect nullified. It was canceled. So again, as I said, I'm not an agronom, and I'm preparing myself to go back to be the rabbi of the Moshav, and I'm going to teach this, and they're all farmers and agronoms and things, and they're going to say, what? I don't. So what I understand from the commentaries, not from the field, is like, as I said, turning over the soil will enable the roots to get more of the moisture, perhaps the dew that condenses on the top of the soil, or perhaps if there are such nutrients, minerals, or fertilizer that kind of, again, accrues at the top, turning it over will give the the roots access to that. Those are the two things that are brought in the commentaries. A lot of times, I don't think that's from a cold. I think it's just this is, again, as an aside, you may find this, especially if you're familiar with gardening or agriculture yourself, that's part of the difficulties in learning these halachot, is that the processes, the agricultural methods used then, may not be the same as today. So you're trying to figure out, what does this correspond to? In Baruch Hashem, we have rabbinic agronoms, experts in agriculture, experts in halacha, and they are experts at translating what the Mishnah is talking about to our reality. Baruch Hashem, there's a lot of advanced agriculture that's used, and things are different. A lot of things are the same. I can only tell you this, again, as an aside. I want to get tachlis here, but in my moshav, fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of the actual work is done by Cherkessim. You know what Cherkessim are? They're from Cherkessia in Asia. Muslims, not Arabs. Muslims. There's also a kfar like that here, but they're expert fieldmen. And I love talking to them because they're like, first of all, every other word is God, bless God, everything is God. And I remember coming to them on the first day of Chol Hamoed Pesach, after we blessed the tal, we started asking for tal. I'm going to think, tal, who cares tal? Why is the rabbi crying? Tal, what's the big deal, tal? And he's going on and on. Oh, we need the tal. It's got to be good tal. It's like you can't have the bad tal that can make the food rot. Like they really live in there is a line of similarity as well. So it's not just, it's a different world altogether. Oh, very good. That's what we said. Just like Shabbos doesn't just start at sundown. We have Tosefet Shabbat. There's a mitzvah to bring in Shabbos early. So the Mishnah is telling us, I warned everyone in advance, so this is not halacha lamase. This is not practical halacha today, but I wanted to show you this concept that there is this idea that in the Mishnah, in the early Mishnah, that Shvius already starts Shavuos time, and if it's a field, then Pesach time. Why? Because if it's a wheat field, why are you plowing? In other words, you could tell me the fruit on the tree, I could hear you, but if you're plowing the field, that can't conceivably benefit any remaining wheat crop, grain that you have. So clearly, you're doing it for next year, and that's us. So that's the Mishnah, the first Mishnah Labriut. What's the source of this? Is this a rabbinic extension? Is this like a Gezerah Shema? Is this just a Maris Ayin? No, we're gonna see that the Mishnah, again, in Shvi'it, actually brings a machloket, a dispute between two great Tanaim, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael. What is the source for this halacha? But its a source is rooted in Doraita, in Torah law, meaning it's not just a rabbinic extension. And let's just see that the verses, the way it works. I hope I brought everything. Oh man, I left out something. Okay, no problem. So the Mishnah says, what is the source for this? Shenemar bechorish uvakotzir tishbot. We have a pasuk in Parshas Kitisa. I'll read it for you in the English here. We're in the second source, as it says, "In plowing and in harvesting you shall rest." Continues the Mishnah, this is actually Rabbi Akiva speaking. It was unnecessary to state plowing and harvesting in the seventh year. If you remember, we learned this in the first class. That's why I wanted to show you the psukim in the very beginning. We have a major parsha dedicated to Shmita. It's Parshas Bahar, towards the end of Sefer Vayikra. This verse is a lone, solitary verse in the middle of a whole array of different mitzvahs in Parshas Kitisa. So Rabbi Akiva is saying, what is it doing out of context? Don't plow, you shall rest. In plowing and harvesting, you shall rest. What's it doing here? We don't need it to teach me about plowing and harvesting the seventh year. I already have a whole parsha called Bahar. So it must be teaching me something new, says Rabbi Akiva. What's it teaching me? Continue with me in the English. It was unnecessary to state plowing and harvesting the seventh year. Rather, what it means is the plowing of the year preceding, which encroaches on the sabbatical year. And the harvest of the seventh year, when do you harvest the crops of the seventh year? Not in the seventh year, in the eighth year, that the Shmita extends backwards into the sixth year and extends afterwards into the eighth year, okay, into the year after. That's Rabbi Akiva. I'm not going to get into this, time does not allow the details of what he's saying, but he understands, that verse is talking about Shmita, but it has to be just a new halacha of Shmita. So this is the headquarters, this is the source for the idea that Shmita in plowing, which is always the preparatory act, begins already in the sixth year. Rabbi Yishmael says no. Rabbi Yishmael disagrees from one end to the other. It's very interesting. Maybe one day we could take the time, because this is a halacha class, I'm not getting into it. In a Chumash class, it would be very interesting to look at these psukim and discover that what Rabbi Yishmael says, it's not even talking about Shmita, right? If I would have told you, taken this verse, plucked it out, in plowing and in harvesting you shall rest. I thought I had I don't have a Chumash. Thought I had a Chumash. Let me read you the whole verse, just so you get a feel of it. Do I have it here? Oh, I got it. I got the verse here. I think I have it. Anyway, I don't find it right now. You can look it up. You have the source here. It's 34:21. Rabbi, if I would have told you a verse that says, "In plowing and harvesting you shall rest," and then asked you, what mitzvah are we talking about? What would be your first guess? Shabbos. Says Rabbi Yishmael, it's not so clear from the words of the Mishnah, but that's what he means. It's not even talking, you're right. It's only about Shmita, because Shmita isn't Bahar. Shmita isn't Sefer Vayikra. This is talking about Shabbos. And what it's coming to tell me is a halacha that you're allowed to harvest the omer, even on Shabbos to cut the omer for a korban, whatever. It's not even talking about it. So where does Rabbi Yishmael learn out the idea of Tosefes Shvi'it? It's so clear to the Chachamim. There is a halacha d'oraita. There is a Torah mitzvah of Tosefet Shvi'is, starting Shvi'is early. If he's not using that pasuk, if that pasuk is already taken as it were for Shabbos, so where does he learn it? So he learns it. I thought I did better in the source sheets, but I guess it's for the best because we don't have time. Yeah. So he learns it. You could see it here. I'll kind of do it outside just for time's sake. I don't get too intricate. Rabbi Yishmael learns it, and you can look yourself in the next source. Halacha leMoshe miSinai. You've heard that expression before. There's a category of mitzvot which are counted as mitzvot d'oraita, which don't appear black and white in the Torah Shebichtav. They have the same status as a d'oraita. For example, the tefillin are black. Where is it? That is a halacha leMoshe miSinai. And if someone's tefillin are brown or green, they do not count as tefillin. Not like midrabanan, they added it, they said that is a core halacha. That was an oral transmission, Moshe at Sinai, that doesn't even have a hook or an allusion to in the text. We have a number of those. And Rabbi Yishmael holds this is one of the halacha leMoshe miSinai. And this could actually be, I'm wondering, this could be my own, just take it with a grain of salt, but is it by accident that the halachas of Shmita appear in Parshat, as I mentioned before, Bahar? What's Bahar? In the mountain. It's one of the only times Hashem introduces the halachot of any mitzvah by saying, Moshe, Behar Sinai Lemor. God spoke to Moshe on Mount Sinai. Usually it doesn't tell, even Rashi wants to know. Everything was at Mount Sinai. Why are you saying to me this was at Mount Sinai? This could be some of the background for the idea that there were special halachas of Shmita transmitted at Mount Sinai. But be that as it may, both Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yishmael have it as a halacha leMoshe miSinai. Why is this relevant for us? Because if you learn like Rabbi Akiva that it's a pasuk, then hey, how come we're not doing it nowadays? Halacha d'oraisa is halacha d'oraisa. It would apply always. However, the Gemara already says this is not a new invention, that this does not apply. Already in the times of the Mishnah, these halachot do not apply. We saw a Mishnah. It was the early Mishnah. The later Mishnah, the finalized Mishnah, did not have these halachas. Why? Because, as you see here, Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, I'm in the third source, which says Talmud Bavli Moed Katan 4a. Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi said that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said in the name of Bar Kapara, that Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Gamliel, he was the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, he was the presiding rabbi of the Sanhedrin. His court discussed and then voted about the prohibitions of these two periods, from Passover or Shavuot to Rosh Hashanah, meaning the 6th year, and nullified them, thereby permitting plowing until Rosh Hashanah, the actual beginning of the sabbatical year. And if you're wondering, hey, Rabbi Gamliel, he may be the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, but how could he overturn a halacha like that? Is that what you were wondering? Was everyone wondering that? This was after the time of the temple, but still the Jews were in the land. It was the Tanaitic period. So they were still observing Shmita. Yeah. So the Gemara wants to know, how can Rabbi Gamliel and his Beis Din overturn a Rabbi Akiva and a Rabbi Yishmael, who were earlier, right? As the Gemara there says, this is one of the sources of how the halacha, how the Torah Shabbat Pet functions. A later Beis Din can't overturn the psak of an earlier Beis Din unless they're greater than it, both in number and in quality, quantity and in quality. So that's what the 3 dots here are. A very interesting discussion. These points of ellipse are the whole discussion. What was the way this worked? The bottom line is, and again, I'll read it. I know I'm not going into it in the detail that it deserves. So I do want to get to the halacha l'maisa. I showed you what does not apply. What does apply? But it's important, by the way, practically. You could come across yourself a Mishnah and say, hey, whoa, Rabbi, doesn't it say here from Shavuos, or do we miss something? Are we not frum enough? So now you know that what happened. This, what you see in the Mishnah, was already in the times of Rabbi Gamliel. It was overturned. Why was that? How does that work, rather? Because Rabbi Gamliel held, not like Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Gamliel did not hold it was a pasuk. It was a pasuk. You can't overturn that. And again, I say, and please remember this, I'm giving this an overview. There are a lot of details here and different shades here of leveling that are happening here. But this is the big picture. It's accurate, but it doesn't take into account the full resolution of what's going on. So Rav Ashi is the bottom line. This is after these three dots here, a whole half a page of Gemara. Rav Gamliel held that the idea, the concept, the mitzvah of Tosefet Shvi'it, the early acceptance of Shmita, was halacha l'Moshe Sinai. It was an oral tradition. And it came down, this is an interesting subject in of itself, as a packet. We had a tradition. There were three different halachas that came in that parceling, I don't know if that's the word, of halachas. One was, you surely have heard of on Sukkot, the idea of the Nisuch HaMayim, the water libations. You know, in the Torah it says we pour wine every day on the Mizbeach, but on Sukkot we also pour water on the Mizbeach. That's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. It may be alluded to very, very vaguely in the Torah, but it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. It's a halacha from Moshe at Sinai, Doraita. It has full status. That was given along with this idea of early Shmita. And Rabbi Gamliel's tradition was that Rabbi Gamliel is after the temple was destroyed. I'm going to read you here. They learned this halacha only with regard to the time period when the temple is standing. This is evidenced by the fact that it is similar to the other halachas stated along with it. Remember, there were two halachas, or maybe three, that were stated together, that the water libation, which is part of the service in the temple. So just like the water libation, the Nisuch HaMayim, it's on the Mizbech, it's on the altar. It's only the time of the temple. Rabbi Gamliel's Beis Din had a tradition, understood that the idea of Tosefet Shmita is reserved exclusively only when the Beis HaMikdash is standing. Therefore, no Beis HaMikdash, you could still have Shmita, but this idea of taking Shabbos in early, of the early Shmita, the prohibition against plowing, pruning, and so forth, in the 6th year, in preparation for the 7th year, no problem. And thus 2 chapters almost of Mishnah, of our Mishnah, become not halacha l'maisa. This is how it's paskin by everyone, the Rambam, Chazon Ish, Rav Kook. This is halacha l'maisa. Yes. And it's interesting. I would like my own personal limud study research to investigate. It's so interesting because someone pointed out, I think last week, that l'choira shvius does not have anything to do with the Beis Hamikdash. Shmita is very connected to, are the Jewish people there? Are they all living there? Mostly living there? Do they have the tribal lands? Do they not have their tribal lands? But what does it do with the Beis Hamikdash? It's like one of the only times we see a connection between the Beis Hamikdash and Shmita, which is illuminating. You shouldn't be surprised. At the end of the day, the Beis Hamikdash really is at the heart of everything. There's almost probably no aspect of Torah, and I mean even aspects, maybe even Dinei Mamonot, even monetary law, civil law, which the Torah has nothing to do, could also be very much affected by the Beis Hamikdash, Sanhedrin, Smicha. A lot of things are affected by the Beis Hamikdash. Here is one. So if you want to know why does this not apply, the answer is it only applied according to Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Gamliel, the times of the Beis Hamikdash. To the best of my limited understanding, according to Rabbi Akiva, if the halacha would have gone in accordance with him, it's a pasuk in the Torah, Parshas Kitisa, it would apply straight through with the Beis Hamikdash without a Beis Hamikdash. So that means that l'chora, we're good to go and do whatever we want until Rosh Hashanah. No. There is one specific area where the halachas of Shmita do apply to the 6th year, not from Pesach, not from Shavuos. Pretty much in general, we'll see in specifics in a second. The cutoff line, probably one of the main cutoff lines that you need to start thinking about, is Tu B'Av, the 15th day of Av, which is so famous for so many other reasons. It has a special quality, not because it's the day of love and the unity, but because Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av, is 6 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, 2 weeks plus minus to the end of Av, right? And then another 30 days of Elul, 44 days before Rosh Hashanah. As we're about to see in the Mishnah, 2 weeks plus 30 days. 44 days, that's the magic number we're going to see. We're going to see what, we're going to see why, and then we're going to see halacha l'maaseh. Let's go to the second sheet. So another Mishnah, sorry for the misspelling there. Another Mishnah in Masechet Shvit, right? You know, I mentioned this in the very, very first class that the word, if you hear this, I just want you to be familiar with the terminology. Shvi'it literally means the seventh. That of course refers to Shmita. So Hilchot Shvi'it or the Mishnan Shvi'it. It's another name for Shmita. Shvi'it literally means seven. Shmita is from the root Shmot, a year of release, right? That we release our ownership of the land. Okay, so the Mishnah says, Ein notin ve'ein mavrichin ve'ein markivin erev shvi'it. They may not plant or graft or sink vine roots in the 6th year, pachot mishloshim yom le'Rosh Hashanah, within 30 days of Rosh Hashanah. Now, for reasons that I'm not going to go into now, it's quite apparent that this is not talking about the same halachot of Shavuot and Pesach about the plowing. Just for the reason that, wait, why 30 days? You should have told me from Pesach or from Shmita, from Shavuos. But this is a different halach. Within 30 days of Rosh Hashanah, as I said, Rosh Hashanah Aleph Tishrei is the beginning of Shmita. No planting, grafting, or sinking vine roots. That's like taking the root of a vine and making like a V, like a U. Like you take it and you put it down, and it comes up somewhere else. It becomes its own vine in its own right. Again, I'm only telling you what it says in the commentaries. I've never done it. I don't think you've ever seen it, but I trust them. You know. Okay, we're going down to 5% battery. I hope to whatever. I hope we get there. Okay. That's would tell you, okay, for Rosh Chodesh Elul, right? 30 days. Well, where'd I come up with 2 B'Av? Look at the rest of the Mishnah. Rabbi Judah says any grafting that has not taken root within 3 days will never do so. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon say 2 weeks. The Mishnah also discusses taking root. It seems to be 2 elements here. 30 days, no planting. Also, we need to know how long does it take to take root. The classic understanding, the way the Gemara understands the Mishnah, is that nothing can take root within 30 days. So you have to plant in advance of those 30 days so that by the time those 30 days come, Aleph Elul, just for the sake of generality, that whatever you're going to plant has already taken root. And we see there's a discussion here. What is the standard for how long it takes to take root? And the way the Rambam, and I told you this last week, the Rambam is our Shulchan Aruch. The Rambam is our baseline halacha. There is no Shulchan Aruch on this. The Rambam says, and I'm reading it just in English now to save time, even nowadays, what does it mean even nowadays? Even nowadays that there is no more Tosefet Shvi'it, there is no more halacha of starting Shmita early, Rabbi Kibbutz, Rabbi Yishmael, from Shavuos and from Pesach. Even nowadays, there's no Beis HaMikdash and there is no Tosefet Shvi'it. There is a halacha. There's one halacha that does apply. It is only permitted to plant, graft, or sink in the 6th year from the time the plant takes root and remains afterwards, 30 days before Rosh Hashanah of Shmita. Says the Rambam, I'm continuing just in the English. The standard time for taking root is 2 weeks. That means 2 B'Av is the last day to plant. Now, if we ask ourselves question of why, a lot of times we'll understand what. If we don't understand why the halacha was stated, then it's hard to know what plants. Is this always the case? Are there exceptions? What if? So there are 2 reasons. I'm going to say this very quickly. The Rambam here, as you see, continues. The Rambam gives a reason. You know what the reason is? Maris Ayin. You know Morris, he's a good friend. Morris Ayin, right? It's always the halacha, the rabbis with Morris Ayin, right? Marit Ayin, because of the onlooker. What does it look like? Now here, pay attention. Usually, Marit Ayin means it's deceiving, it's misleading. If I'm planting now, if I'm doing something now, it looks like I'm doing an aver, but I'm really not. If I'm sitting in McDonald's eating, drinking Coke, it looks like, right? That's the usual case of Maris Ayin. Here it's a little bit different. Here it's delayed reaction. Can anyone think of what's the Maris Ayin if you plant very close to Shmita? And there's a certain halachic nuance, but what's the big picture here? If someone's going to think now it's Shmita, oh, you're violating Shmita now? That's not the problem. Everyone knows that it's Elul. Everyone knows it's the 6th year. What are they going to think I'm doing? What's going to happen in 6 months? What's going to happen in 3 years when they see these young saplings in my garden? What's going to happen when I start counting the Orla years? This is the classic understanding of the Rambam. Orla, and we learned this, by the way, about 2 months ago. Orla, the way counting for the 3 years of Orla is, you get a bonus. It's 3 full years. As long as you plant within 1 month of Rosh Hashanah, you count that last month as the first year. It's like, the bonus. You have 1 month is considered, you got your foot in the door of the first year. After that, you only need 2 more years. And the halacha of Orla is that it needs to be 2 weeks taking root. And then once it's taken root, it's been a month in this year, you only need 2 more years. So if you miss the cutoff, in any year, this is true. In any year, the 3 years of Orla are going to do a Shmita, except now they do. Because what's going to happen? If you don't count, if you don't get your foot in the door and plant before Tu B'Av, then when are you going to start counting Orla? 3 years, 1, 2, 3. So someone's going to see, it's your 4th year, you have Netar Ravai, and now you're starting to eat. This is your first year of eating your fruit after 3 years. Let's go backwards. In Tav Shin Pei Dalid, that means that this tree is a tree from Tav Shin Pei Bet, Tav Shin Pei Hey, Tav Shin Pei Bet, Shmita year. Whoa, this tree must have been planted in Shmita. If you're only eating the fruit now, this is a delayed reaction, Maris Ayin, right? The fact that the fruits will only be available for use and permitted 3 years, it will count back. You did it permittedly. They're not going to know that, because I planted in Elul. And that's why I missed the cutoff date, so I have to count the 3 full years. The way it's going to look, no one's going to remember 3 years from now, whether you planted in Elul or you planted in Tishrei, before Rosh Hashanah or after Rosh Hashanah. This fruit is counted as exiting Orla from Shmita, means Orla-wise, this is counted as Shmita fruit, Shmita tree. That is the Maris Ayin the Rambam is probably talking about. There are other opinions, but that's what I'm talking about. There's another opinion, and I know we're okay, we still have battery. So there's another explanation here, and this is very important. That's the Rambam explanation. Rashi and Tosfos learn different. Can anyone think of a different reason why you want to make sure that the tree was taken root in advance? And then you would know that the land is more secure when he intended to. Right, beautiful. Right, it's like Shabbos. It's like Shabbos. You have to, before you put food on the plata or the blech, you have to make sure it's ready to a certain amount so that you don't come to tend to it. Her question, she actually suggested a different explanation, not Maris Ayin, but because, I asked, what could be another explanation for this halacha that even Bisman Hazeh, it's not Tosefet, it's not early Shmita, yet there's still a issue of planting. It's no problem of plowing, pruning, fertilizing. planting is a problem. And she's saying, well, you want to make sure that it's going to be hardy before, so you're not tempted, or you don't put yourself in a situation where you need to tend to it and chas v'shalom violate the laws of Shmita. That's a very interesting answer. I think there is a basis for that. Rashi and Tosfos say that, remember we talked about this? This goes into the depth of what the difference between Shabbos and Shmita is. Shabbos, generally speaking, it's 39 prohibited categories of labor on me. I called it the gavra, on the person. It's not the problem that if I tear, the napkins need to rest, therefore don't tear. Paper needs to rest, therefore don't write on the paper. The way the psukim have it is on Shmita, b'shavta ha'aretz Shabbos l'Hashem, the land shall have a Sabbath unto the Lord. It's a Shabbos of the land. I am prohibited from doing labors on the land so that the land can rest. There's a much more focus, what we call in halachic terminology, the hefza, the object, not the subject, me. The object is the land. The land can rest. Alive, right? Like the land gets its Shabbos. That's how the psukim read. That's the simple reading of the psukim, which could be very poetic, can be very spiritual. Here, perhaps, is a halachic ramification of this. One halachic ramification, by the way, is okay. I won't do it. I'll have a robot do it, or I'll have the Cherkessi do it. I'm not doing it, right? Shabbos is less of a problem, right? But in Shmita, it may be more of it, because the issue is not who is doing it. The issue is I am responsible that the land rest. Good, excellent question. B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to get to that question. Not today. So if you plant when the tree, not the fruit, the tree is going to be taking root in the Shmita year, they understand something. They don't have the 44 days of the Rambam. They just have the 2 weeks. They don't have that whole month. I won't get into why. 2 weeks is the time it takes for the tree to take root. Don't plant from Tes Vav Elul 2 weeks before, because otherwise the tree will take root in the Shmita year. Delayed reaction planting. You plant it today. I don't think there's a problem on Shabbos, on Friday, of planting something that's going to only germinate or whatever it's called. What's it called? Nevatim, sprouts on Shabbos. That's not a problem as far as I know. I don't want to say for sure. As far as I know, there's no issue. But Shmita, it is a problem, because Shabbos ha'aretz Shabbos l'Hashem. The land needs to rest, so you need to already take into account now. Okay, so that's a different approach. That approach, there's a what we call in the base medrash a nafkamina. There's a practical difference between each approach. You already saw one. I kind of snuck it under. Is it 30 days plus 2 weeks, or is it just 2 weeks? Meaning, if you're going with the Maris Ayin, I'm saying this quick. It's somewhat a subtle point. If you don't get it, I'm sorry. But if you're going with the problem of, according to the oral calculations, it'll come out, this tree will look like a Shmita tree, and it'll come out that you violated Shmita, then you have to go with the oral calculations, the oral calendar. The way oral works is you got to get a month in the door for the previous year plus 2 weeks to take root. That's why the Rambam has 2 weeks plus 30 days. If you're going with the problem of Shabbos, that the Aretz has to have Shabbos, so the only issue is the 2 weeks, taking root. That's Rashi and Tosfos. They don't have the 30 days. There's another practical difference, is according to the Rambam, if it's sent to Maris Ayin, to Orla only applies to fruit trees, right? Only issue of fruit trees. Non-fruit trees, shade trees, flowers, vegetables, it doesn't apply. The whole Maris Ayin is just a function of when the fruit of that tree comes into permission. So the two different approaches are the basis for this halacha. Halacha l'maisa. Now we're going to, I promise we'll come halacha l'maisa, as you are sometimes familiar, especially in Shmita. We don't have a Shulchan Aruch who was so clearly delineated in paskin this and not that. You're going to see a lot more combinations, a lot more melding together of different shitas, different opinions, and not just saying this or that. We're going to take into account several opinions here because we didn't have that Shulchan Aruch to decide for us. I think that's what happened here. So it goes as follows. Okay, I'm going to try to say for halacha l'maisa. I'll have the book open in front of me to make sure I don't make a mistake. And questions are afterwards, okay? Okay, so a fruit tree, if it's bare rooted, I don't think you can buy that, but let's say you just bought it or uprooted a tree without its, we say in Hebrew, gush afar. It doesn't come with a bag of dirt, soil. So that takes 2 weeks till the sapling takes root, plus 30 days. We're going with the Rambam here. So fruit trees, bare-rooted fruit trees, if you're planting your garden, so including Tu B'Av, by the sunset of Tu B'Av, you're going to plant those fruit trees. If you're buying it already in a big bag of dirt, here I'm not such a gardener, you pardon me, it's enough dirt that fruit tree basically exists, it's already taken root. It could survive by itself for 2 weeks in that dirt. Then you don't need to take root. It's already taken root. You don't need the 2 weeks to take root. All you need is what? Who wants to guess? How long before? 30 days. Beautiful. 30 days before, because you don't need the 2 week taking root. All you need to do is make sure that for Orla, you got your foot in the door. Really, as whatever's working for Hilchos Orla is working here as well. So if it's in the bag, then you have, in the dirt bag, then you have till Rosh Chodesh Elul, 30 days, to the end, to right before Rosh Chodesh Elul, right? The Erev Rosh Chodesh Elul to do that. What about what about not fruit trees? So we saw the holy tree Marasayin falls off. You don't have to worry about 30 days for sure. It's only an issue of Shabbos, of the fruit tree, of the non-fruit tree taking root. So again, if it's already in a bag of dirt, a bag of soil, anyone want to figure it out themselves? When can you plant a non-fruit tree, no orla, yet, and it's already taken root in its independent bag of soil? When can you plant to? Erev Rosh Hashanah, beautiful. Exactly. All the problems fall away. It's already taken root. You're not going to violate the Sabbath of the earth. There's no problem of orla. You're good. If it does not have sufficient dirt, then you can plant it until Tes Vavel, 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, because it's got to take root. I'm not an expert, and I would actually ask everyone doing this with taking advantage of the dirt bag heter to consult with someone who knows. By that time, hopefully, I will just make sure how much dirt, what kind of dirt, plastic bag with holes, without holes. There could be some nuances in this dirt bag thing, okay? What about flowers? What about vegetables? So vegetables take less time, according to halacha, there's less time for it to actually take root. And halacha is as follows. All other things besides fruit, obviously, are not going to have an issue of 30 days because there's no issue of orla. It's just going to be an issue of taking root. And there's other issues here, which we're going to get into later, called Kiddushat Shvi'it. Will the vegetables have the holiness of Shvi'it? Will they be prohibited? You may be able to plant them, but they may be forbidden to eat because of what we're going to learn. So vegetables and flowers should be planted 3 days before Rosh Hashanah, so they already take root before Rosh Hashanah. Okay, if you're planting grass, a lawn in your garden this year, you want to do that as early as possible. Why? Because this is connected to what you said before. I forgot who said about the idea of you need to take care of it early on. It's very important to water the grass and to mow it so that it promulgates or propagates. So you want to make sure that the lawn, even if you're doing the rollout, the lawn, the carpet or the seeds, you need to take that in. That it could actually be significantly before 2 weeks or maybe even before 6 weeks. And you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're going to ruin that lawn because you're not going to be able to mow it like you need to and water it like you need to because of Shmita. But again, if it's a fruit tree, Tu B'Av, unless you have the bag of soil, which is 30 days. If it's a tree that's not a fruit tree, so then without a bag, without its own soil, it's already taken root. If it's already taken